Call this meeting of the Church-Cibolo Universal City Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code Chapter 551. The time is now 6 o'clock. Roll call.
All board members are present except for Gary Emmett.
Gary Emmett told me he had previous engagement.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Welcome everybody for another board workshop, budget workshop. Appreciate everybody's effort and attention, especially Dr. Gibson's executive leadership team, the Team 1 members. So, I guess we have about an hour and a half worth of material.
Yeah, we should be able to take care of everything in an hour, and then I know we have a quick executive session. So, I mean, my goal is to have the board completely out of here within 90 minutes. So a budget workshop kind of becomes a legislative update, but that's the way a budget workshop goes when the session is in. So with that, if you're ready, we'll just dive in. Paige has got, and I'll weigh in on some of the things that happened today that were announced today and kind of how that impacts us. Then we're going to look at our 6,200, 6,300, and 6,400 analysis. Linda wants to run back through the TASB salary survey or salary study that we talked about at the last board meeting, whatever questions there are, and then she has at least one question to kind of get direction from the board. And then we want to talk a little bit about the budget parameter memo, and you know, I'm glad we got done what we got done, because now you just kind of have to say that looks really good, and none of that may happen, or some of that may happen, or so. But it's good to kind of already be settled there and not be trying to solve some of that. And then Wayne has a quick update on our EPP, and then we have a quick kind of ask in the middle of that we want to get some direction on one particular ask, and then we wanted to give a quick update on the one-time payment, and then we have a quick executive session after that. So Paige, you ready?
Yes, and we've provided or prepared a packet for you guys to kind of to follow along. The people at home that are watching can also follow along on the screen, and it follows the agenda items that are on the second page. So if you go to the third page of your packet, right after the agenda page, the legislative update page, this is just a little overview of the things we've been seeing. We know that early on in the session, the comptroller released estimates on additional revenue that would be available within the system, largely due to the success of oil and gas revenues right now. But the fiscal forecast for the state of Texas looks pretty good for the next biennium. We've seen a lot with property tax relief legislation first coming out of the Senate. A little surprising that preceded a school finance bill, but that was the first thing out of the gate. There is some pushback on that 2.5% cap currently, because it would be impossible for cities, growing counties, growing school districts to meet the needs and demands of growing populations with services. So that there's some pushback on that, and now pretty much everyone, including the Republicans who filed the bill, are saying that was just a starting piece of the conversation. Lots of play-in and lots of testimony from the School Finance Commission. We're seeing that in both education committees on the Senate side and on the House side. We are last week with the Texas Monthly release of the STAR test article, and the validity of the reading levels on the STAR test has created a lot of conversation around testing bills. So I think that we're going to see a lot of that and a lot of testimony. And
they're debating that right now.
Right now. So New York Times picked it up today, and so it's going to be a national I mean, it's going to get a lot of attention. Teacher pay, we're going to see coming out of the Senate. We'll see that as a part of their bill, and have provided materials for you guys for that. And then the House Education bill was released today by Chairman Huberty and Speaker Bonham. So
We have, just as an extra document at the table, did everybody get one? There's the House bill that's released. You know, there's not a plan per se for the Senate as far as like a public education plan. So we just gave you, this is the closest we have, is the Texas Tribune article. And then you tried to crystallize it on the next slide, is that right?
yeah, and so if you look at the, if you just look up front, and we provided those two documents for you. On the Senate side, it's about $4 billion additional funding, and all of that money would go to the $5,000 across-the-board teacher and librarian pay raise. The librarians were added yesterday, I believe. And so, as Dr. Gibson said, we could not find like a plan that the Senate had released, anything formal, so we used the Texas Tribune article to kind of, it really is the bulk of the Senate plan is the $5,000 teacher, across-the-board teacher pay raise. The House bill, as you can see on the handout, there are many things that are going into it, and as they released it, experts from the House, many talked as they released the bill during the press conference. It would infuse $9 billion into this current system, and within that $9 billion, it adds about $890 per student to the basic allotment. And we'll get into the implications for Church Cibolo on the next couple of slides if that were to come to pass. And then we provided this one pager for you guys on that.
Well, yeah, we just copied it. It came to us from the House, just in this format.
So,
I just want to make sure they knew we didn't make
oh
this
no, we didn't make that.
This came from the
Right.
House.
So if you look at the Senate bill implications for our district, here's what a $5,000 pay increase would kind of look like in our district. You know, and I use snapshot data, which would have been October snapshot. 935 teachers. That would be the estimated $5,000 cost. There are additional costs associated with giving that sort of a pay increase, and that would be your district contributions to TRS and Medicare. And so we have to add those in anytime that we're giving a pay increase.
Right now in that bill, that does not include, that's
It
going to
does
fall
not
on
include,
us.
that would fall back on us, yes. Now librarians would be a part of the funding that we would get. So we have 15 librarians. That's also a 9% increase because
we did this before they
we did it before,
before they switched it yesterday.
So, but we went ahead and put the counselors and the nurses. So, you know, you're looking at over on the total 173,000 plus 86,000 if we were to do that for counselors and nurses. So that we would assume that cost too. And Dr. Gibson, you want to talk a little? We've always put those.
So the last 3 times, I guess in our recollection, that they've given a quote-unquote teacher pay raise, it's been teachers, counselors, nurses, and librarians. I mean, that's been the group. So that's why this is just frame of reference. Now this time it's only teachers and librarians. So they just let you see what it costs for counselors and nurses. So there's that consideration. Then there's another consideration that, you know, we'll run numbers on this if the board wants to. But if this occurs, then what happens on your pay grades is now, you know, there'll be quite a few teachers. I'm not saying it's good, I'm not saying it's bad, it's just the numbers. But at your low admin pay grade, which is kind of predicated on teacher salary, now you'll have a lot of teachers making more than assistant principals. So if you just think about it that way. So now, I know, again, I'm not proposing this, I'm just saying, so if you give a raise to assistant principals to help offset that, now you've got assistant principals making more than principals. Okay, if you give a raise to help that, now you've got principals making more than directors. Y'all see with this. So it's just a fact that our TASB salary study that we do predicates a lot of our admin pay grade based on where the current, and the assumption there is it's not arbitrary that someone was a teacher They went and got a master's degree at least, or maybe a master's degree plus some certifications. And so how do you calibrate that job off of that teacher job? So that's just, I think that's worth us just pointing out. We didn't calculate all that here. Those numbers can get pretty big. So, yeah, is there anything else on the Senate? So page one thing I thought, so if you go back a slide, you know, and you look at the Senate, $4 billion goes to 5,000 across the board. See the Tribune article, that's about as good information as we have. That box that's down below there, so maybe moving forward, so what is the net impact on SCUC?
So what we would get, yes.
Well, but what is the net impact? It's on the next page.
It's on the
right?
next page, yes.
So it's a negative 500,000, is that right? Potentially?
The 411,
Okay,
and then
right,
take the
yeah.
librarian out now. I mean, they would go up with the teachers because we would get that.
So I think it's,
Yeah.
so, because everybody's going to look at this through their own little knothole in the fence. Our job is to lay out what's the impact to the ISD. That one cost $500,000. That education plan cost the district $500,000. I'm going to round up. So what is the net impact? I'm not trying to steal your thunder, but we're about to go through it. But what's the net impact on the House plan?
It is 9 million with additional funding.
Okay, so SCUC would receive $9 million additional dollars under the House plan. So one plan cost us $500,000, the other one is a net $9 million.
I want to be clear too, in that Senate bill, we pay above grade,
Right.
but it says nowhere in there right now that, because there are districts in this state that pay
Off of the state base.
exactly.
Yep.
So our teachers are paid above that, and then if you're looking at that, with that $5,000, they would be getting a 9%
Right.
increase.
And I didn't put this on the House slide for the implications, but in the House plan, it's going to raise the minimum teacher salary schedule.
Okay.
And
For
so
those
the
that are-
lowest,
On the House.
on the House side,
Right.
the lowest
So it's going
quartile.
to raise it for districts that are
Right.
still at state.
From what the House's rationale that I heard today is that these comparisons of we're 47th in the nation and all that looks at the minimum pay scale.
Okay.
Do you see, that doesn't look at what Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, I'm not going to say Austin because Austin's still lagging behind, but it doesn't look at what DFW, Houston, and San Antonio pay. Because we're way above the state. We've gone ahead and made that commitment, and y'all did that before I arrived here. Is that right, David and Ed? I mean, 2 or 3 years before maybe 3 or 4, y'all made a commitment that we got to get competitive in the San Antonio market. Anyway, so that, I think maybe putting the net impact to the ISD, is that helpful? Because
Well, and I mean, we would get, however, the amount that would be to fund those salaries.
I mean,
Okay, we
they're
would-
not telling us
but
to pay it.
when
Right.
all the,
Not
when
giving us
all the
money, 'cause that
pluses
could
and
be
all the
hers.
minuses are
Right.
done, what's the impact to SCUC?
It's a negative.
Okay, it's a negative. So
Well,
one-
it's
It's not a
positive for the
negative.
teacher.
It's not negative for the
But
teachers.
the
but-
SC
the concern that I've had with this bill is, we shared it when, I know I brought it up when we talked at the Capitol with our representatives and senators, was the fact that this brings nothing to the classroom. This is all salary, and it adds nothing to the classroom. And also, what happens in 2 years?
Yeah, we were-
That's the concern I have, is what,
Yeah.
being a little bit of a skeptic, as they caught some grief last year, and you could tell by the voting outcome, what happened in the elections, that there were some unhappy people because they made promises they didn't keep. They weren't going to keep them anyway. And $1,000 2 years ago was what was the talking point, would have killed a lot of these districts that pay minimum wage, that pay the base salary. They would have gone under. And, this year they started talking about $10,000, and now it's $5,000.
I would love for the teachers to get this 5,000, but what happens in 2 years? That's my concern.
That's a definite.
If it's not part of the basic allotment, if it doesn't come in, and it's in cold stone, I just, you know, I'm like I say, I'm skeptical, but we'll see.
Well, and, you know, in looking at the House Bill 3 implications, just looking at some of the things today that were released, and we're still putting this stuff together. I mean, looking at newspaper articles, trying to figure these things out. But what it looks like in the House plan is that they've really tried to look at the formula and make some changes, some meaningful, well, some changes. So an increase to the basic allotment, you know, to 60/30, since we're already in an adjusted amount higher than the actual basic allotment, that would be about approximately $560 per student for us, so it's about $9 million in additional revenue for the district. Some other things that are going to come into play are some program weights and enhancements. You know, they talked about funding all day pre-K for economically disadvantaged students. Well, that does worry us, but we actually got some comfort today. They said right out of the gate, there are some districts that are going to have some capacity concerns because of growth. They said that there will be adjustments in that where you're going to have to utilize the funds to fund early intervention, you know, in those early grades. So we would maybe
it wouldn't have to be a separate pre-K classroom. It could
Right.
be additional staff members.
It could be additional staff members to help.
Students or
Absolutely.
kindergarten students, which Wayne started breathing again.
Absolutely.
Yes, chief operations standpoint.
Some program weights for dyslexia, which will bring more funding. Lots of focus on early education, grade 3, reading on grade level by grade 3. So lots of things there. And then some different things for economically disadvantaged students, some different tiers, focusing mostly on groups of economically disadvantaged students who are living in high concentrations of poverty. And I don't know that we would fall into that, maybe a couple of our attendance zones, but I really don't know what that's going to look like. Another thing that they're talking about, and we don't, you know, there's one thing in there that says that they're going to reduce the tax rates across the state by 4 cents. We're just kind of going back and forth right now. It's looking like they might compress the tax rate to $1.10, which that wouldn't affect us because we haven't gone there yet. But one thing that they are saying is enhancing the yield on the enrichment pennies, which taking those golden pennies to be even more valuable. And it's looking like on the copper pennies, which we don't have any of those, but if we did raising the local contribution, what you would be able to keep. And so that's going to help. That's where they're getting that money back in recapture as well. So
it's not, if we're at $1.04 on MNO,
they're not really looking at us.
We think that's what we understand. It's the districts that have passed TREs that are over $1.10 on MNO. You know, like at the $1.17, that they're taking all of them back to $1.10, and then they're making them whole on what they just lost. So they're going to just, because they gave a tax break that way. That's their, instead of the 2.5%, the House is saying that's the way to give a tax break, really lower their rate 7 cents for those that went over it. And that's probably good. I mean, we don't get any of that, but then that's probably, it's not bad for us.
Well, we will get the yield on, you know, those 4 cents will become more valuable. And so and Ed and I were like, this is raw because we were just like in the hallway walking down here, but because of one thing they said on the 2 additional golden pennies, there's something in there that they said that one of them may have to be authorized by voters. So that made us think that the other one, like the 5th penny, is a budget workshop. It's not a TRE. I mean, it's just go through the budget process. So then that's potentially, because they have to give some meaningful discretion. That's what the courts have said is illegal. So I think they're going to give 1 penny that you can just get, and then another penny that you go get for a TRE thing.
But didn't Hubert say that if the school districts that were above or that were using the additional pennies, whether they're golden or copper, that if there was increased funding and they dropped back, that if that increased funding went away in 2 years, that they would be able to go back to that without having another election.
Yeah.
Because they had already had it approved.
And that would make sense.
Yeah.
Well, and what makes me think is even they would have to make those 4 copper pennies as valuable as the other 7.
Yeah.
Do you see? I mean, they would have to be able to keep their property taxes back in the
Right.
district
Yeah.
on those 4. That's what that would be the only way
Yeah.
they could do that.
Was there House Bill 3, are they still talking about extending the school year 30 days?
I did not see that in the
That-
plan, and you would think, these are the big points, so you
It
would
was
think
on here.
something like that would be on this. But, and it's not on here, Mr. Peter, that's a great question.
It was in.
I know they had brought it up.
It
Because of the
establishes an extended year
Because of the grade
program
3 reading level.
Right.
They thought that adding the 30 days would somehow
there.
help
for
that.
K through 5
Yeah.
during a 30-day for the.
It's on the back.
Yeah, there it
Yeah.
is, it is down, 1, 2, 3, 4,
Yeah.
5, 6 from the bottom. There it is, that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, but see, that's going to increase our costs too. Because you have to run buses, you have to have air conditioning, you have to have.
I'm assuming there's a weight in here because they're saying net gains for every district. I mean, that's their plan with the $9 billion. And I'm only saying this because they also part of this plan, but they made sure to announce with this that they were going to fully fund the TRS plan to make it actually sound so that they could have their checks. It's 44 million more that they'd have to. No, it's 400 something million. There's a hole in there of some million. I'll double check.
Okay.
I don't think
When I was 44 billion, about that.
yeah, I don't
They should have that.
they only have to fill in the gap for about yeah. So then,
About that.
yeah, they have to. That was just
Let's hear it.
but why? I think the importance of them talking about that because they're realizing current that not a viable retirement plan and insurance plan, and that kind of why that's a big part of why I was doing it.
Well, they're catching on to ER too.
That's right.
That's they're going to catch flack about that too.
That's right. So I mean, that was kind of promising to hear that actually this time 2 years ago they weren't even talking about TRS.
Yeah, and Representative Gutierrez said it right, said the right thing. But
Said it's before.
that, but he also said how a certain group of us.
Yeah.
So what's the reconciliation between the 2 bills?
Well, it's miles and miles apart. And
From the
okay, so that's what it, no, just talking about
It's just recommended.
right. And so,
It has,
so I,
it has to have
The Senate has between
a
them.
long way.
And at the point, both houses have to pass the same bill. If they pass the same bill, nothing happens.
and so as opinion, we're talking about that tomorrow a big tail. Tomorrow a big D house this plan, and it's a start. We'll be able to reconcile between the two. You know, then that's probably a good way to get a little bit of when it is. The plan doesn't support teachers. We know we're about for 60 or 90 days of just hard politics, you know, battling each other. So we'll kind of, I think we'll get a little bit of a tell tomorrow.
There are some transportation funding changes within it that would affect us. I was talking to Mr. Perez earlier today. They would take away, the linear density formula has been in place for almost 20 years, and they're going to change to a straight dollar per mile. That would actually hurt us a little bit. Nothing significant, it's almost a wash, but we're not going to get really any new funding for transportation in this bill. And there are some additional dollars in this bill for new instructional facilities. So anything would be great on the INS side to help us with that.
I think it's at 4 times their previous allocation, so. All right.
That kind of ends the legislative discussion, so.
Jump into
Okay, the next slide is on the budget analysis update. So we've gone back and our C200s are our contracted services. So at the department level, we've been looking at contracted services. 6300s is general supplies. We've been looking at those budgets. And then 6400s is travel / miscellaneous. So we're in the process of looking at that. Our finance department is working with all the departments right now and planning for the 1920. One of the big things that we've done, and we will replicate this each and every year, it's just a good practice, is a district software renewal analysis, and that's to go in and look at usage reports and make sure that for every single piece of software that we're utilizing in the district, that it is being used and is necessary to do our daily business. So I think we're going to see some cuts there. And again, looking for reduction of expenses for contracted services, supplies, and the travel and miscellaneous operatings. Our projection right now, not going to get to the $1 million in savings, but we think we're going to come in somewhere between $400,000 and $500,000 through this analysis. And again, this is something that we believe is going to be best practice every year when you look at your budgets. And we think that we can extend this down to the high school budgets and possibly the junior high budgets a little larger, and they could replicate this just as the departments have done.
It may be hard to achieve the $500,000 next year, but we can avoid the creep back to
That's right.
that by going through that annual analysis. Okay. All right, Ted.
You want to turn it over to Dr.?
Yes, we have, just as a reminder, there was 8 recommendations that Tassie made at the last board meeting with the salary study. So just as a reminder, first one was to implement pay structures and adjustments to align with the market. This was mainly in the instructional support area and some auxiliary positions. They did make the recommendation at a general pay increase of 2 or 3%. With the adjustment to the 0-year teacher salary, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second.
That number 2 is just kind of on hold. Like I said earlier, okay,
Yeah.
we're just putting something on the budget parameter, but we got to wait now on the session and just see what happens.
And probably the bigger of the recommendations of what we would need to make a decision on. I'll give you more information on that. Providing adjustments to address market differences and maintain equity. I think at the meeting she talked about bus monitors, raising the salary there, and bus drivers, looking at instructional paras, and then just making sure the admin pay grades are, especially for those on the educational track, are not paid less than a teacher. Looking at the new hire schedule and capping that at 30 years. With those additional, as they stay and maintain on, they would still be allowed the increase per year, but capping, they just bringing them in as a new hire at 30 years.
Can you, similar to other things, just provide how many people over 30 years we've hired in the last 5 years, maybe in the board update? Is
Sure.
that, yeah, you know what I'm saying? Because
Yeah.
I don't think that this is that big of a,
It's not.
yeah, maybe 2 or 3.
Looking at offering a stipend for our special education teachers that are in the self-contained programs, and that's mainly because they're a little bit harder to staff and a little bit harder as far as the training skills necessary for those classrooms. So adding in a stipend there. We talked about an increase to the substitute daily rate by providing the surrounding districts around us and what they're paying, and so to get us closer to that. We're not far below it, but we do need to look at an increase there. And then just some changes in pay grade assignments, mainly our special ed paras that are in the self-contained programs as well, like we're giving the teacher a stipend. We would, those that are in the self-contained programs, working for those, moving from pay grade 2 to a 3.
So Linda, can you drill in on the new salary question? And then we'll go back and just see if anybody has any questions on the others. So this next 2 slides.
So the next slide, currently our 0-year teachers are paid at $50,000 per year. In 2017-18, we hired 11 new teachers, and then 18-19 school year we hired 21. And so this is where the market salaries fell into. And so if you look at that 50,000 mark, it's below that 75th percentile, so it's definitely not in the top quartile, it's below that. That recommendation that night to get you into the, above the quartile was at 54.5. To get you into the 75th percentile, it would be 51.388.
So what, I'm
So-
gonna ask everyone to suspend the Senate plan for a little bit. If you, okay, just forget that 5,000 or something may happen. If it did not, hypothetically, if it did not happen, then Linda, you're wanting to know where's the right number.
Correct.
And we just need, and we're okay with wherever it can stay 50.
It can stay 50.
But, and they're saying 54 gets it. Let me back up. The board earlier had asked us to make sure we were in the top quartile at each, at 0, 5, 10, 15. All of the others, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, they're all in the top quartile. The 0 is not, right, Linda? That's what TASB said?
That's correct. Anything above 51.275 is going to be in the top quartile.
Okay, so that would be a
So anything
rationale
above it.
to maybe pick 52. It's not arbitrary, that just gets it in the top quartile, if that's the target. And if, like, again, forget Senate Bill 3 for just a second. We're not saying, we're not deciding this tonight, we're just saying if none of that happens, where do we want this number to be? Y'all want to start with that 52 because it gets you into the top quartile?
Yeah, I would like to see that 52, and then where are we 5 years down on that same schedule?
5% of them.
Yeah, we're good. What she reported the other night is that we're number 2 or number 1 in the San Antonio market on every other number.
I know now we're like at 55,000 at year 5, somewhere around that range, 55, 56, somewhere in that year
It's
range.
about 55.
55.7 on that.
75, yeah.
Right, about, yeah.
But
56.
and we can send that, those, like where we are at 5 and 10 and 15.
Yeah,
They're
send
on
that out
here.
of
if
the
we-
board
if we would
update.
go to the 52, where would we be?
Look at the line.
5, 10, because if we stayed static at 5, like where we're at now, then
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
so
It's gonna happen.
he's saying, how does it
Yeah.
stack out to the
that's,
subsequent years then?
You may be coming right back to it, to adjust. It's,
Yeah, so what okay, so we did not.
There'd be a less of a jump between 0 and 5 now.
That's correct.
yeah, I would like, see, I don't want
that
to
would be
lose
less
that
of a
jump.
jump.
Yeah.
Then,
Because
and that's why I
we're-
asked
We
Linda,
purposely
Well, okay,
created
fair.
that.
how many people does it really affect? And we
Well,
had a
the-
higher percent turnover rate this year than the year before. That's
So-
why I think that number 11,
Right.
And then this year we hired 21.
yeah.
The thing that.
We didn't get to, Mr. Pipto, if I may, we didn't get to the 50,000 accidentally. We've held there.
No,
For
I-
the very reason you're not agreeing.
Yeah, no, I agree, that's what I'm saying.
Right.
If you're gonna expand the 0 line, then to me, you don't expand the 5, 10.
Right.
You've lost footing, because if you look at the districts that are ahead of us now, and there are a couple of districts in our area that are ahead of us now in the 0 year, but we go ahead of them in year 5,
Right.
even though they start ahead of us.
So is everybody comfortable with it just staying that way?
Well,
See-
our jump is a lot bigger between 0 to 5 than 5 to 10, 10 to 15, et cetera.
Well, yeah, and that's, I mean, I'm
So
okay
that's
with
why-
that, you know, I don't see that that's being a
Right.
big issue.
Is it hurting us recruiting people?
I haven't seen that it's been
We
hurting
have
us.
long lines.
I think, you know, again, to me, that if you can keep them in 5 years, you're gonna keep them.
Yes. I would agree.
Unless somebody has to transfer for whatever
I
reason.
agree.
You know, spouse has to leave or whatever, you know, military. But usually if you keep them for 5 years, they're gonna be happy, they're gonna
So
stay.
okay, so
They're invested in
we had
that.
talked about 50,000 because that's where it is, 52 because that gets it into the top quartile. She's saying 54, our analyst, is because that gets us up to 1 and 2 like we are in all other categories. So if we're talking about the difference, let's go back to 52 or 50. Like, do we want to raise it at all, I guess?
So my thoughts on this are that what we say when we have that giant jump at the 5-year, the 10-year, and the 15-year is that we value longevity, that
There
we
are
value
those-
you staying here
Some
longer.
interpret it that way, yes.
So that's how I see it.
Yep.
That if we're gonna put money somewhere, we're putting it in those who have been here longer.
So we are here because you all asked us to get all pay grades in the top quartile. 52 does that. If now that we've learned what we've learned, if you're comfortable with saying all pay grades except for the 0-year hiring, if that's, then we're comfortable
Yeah.
with that also. And I guess that's what we really kind of just need consensus, because we would have to bring, well, like you need to know what to plug into the document when we bring the final pay.
When we do the compensation package,
Yeah.
you know.
So right now, we're going, okay,
What amount are we talking about?
50,000 is where we are.
Right.
52 gets us in the top quartile. 54 gets us to number 1.
And 52 would cost us 42,000?
21
Yeah.
teachers.
If it was the same as last year. Let's just average those two, 15
Let's
teachers
say
at
well, more than that. 'Cause
2,000 each.
maximum
You can do it that
Pay
way.
in, TRS higher,
Right.
so
Well, if you look,
it's 50,000.
if you look at the graph that's sitting there, if you start off at the very top of 20 years and run straight through the 5-year number, you're looking at about 54. If you take the same starting point at 20 years and run it through the 10-year point, you're at about 52.5
Yeah.
on those lines. Now, either one puts us above the 75th percentile. So if you're talking about 52, it gets you there,
Yeah.
but it still leaves that lagging as far as the top, but it does get you above the next line.
Quartile, correct.
So, but 52.5 is what it's going to take to get you at that line from 10 to 20 years.
Yeah.
That's what it's going to take. So 52 doesn't get you there.
But we could still have a steeper
Well,
incline.
I think
We could put it at 52 and still
52 gets
have.
us in the top quartile.
It does get us in top quartile.
And I think that's the objective. Again, I think, we need to, again, look how that impacts what happens down
Right.
the line, 5, 10, 15 years out.
But also too, it's not just that starting everything from 0 to 5 years, it's also going to be adjusted correctly.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Right. Yeah.
Yes,
You don't
there would
that
have to
number
be some
either.
adjustments there, yes.
So where we start this at 0 years, 0 through 5, well, 1 through 5 will also be adjusted. It's just going to be a cost there
Yes.
also.
And there was
Right.
recommendations on that.
At what year,
See that
at what
number.
point do they intersect? At what year do they intersect? And our new teachers now are making 51,275 at year 2 or year 1?
I'd have to go back to the pay scales to look at that.
Looking at the scale, it looks like year 2.
Yeah, roughly year 2.
I would say we have ballparks. Year 2, she's going to
Yeah, but
somewhere
Why-
in.
in the big scope of things, other than our decision, the board decision to make it in the top quartile, what's the even benefit of raising this teacher salary? How does it affect student outcomes? I mean, why not leave it the way it is right now?
Yeah, we're here with it because you asked us to bring it back.
Oh, I agree, I know we're there, but
So it's a question for the board.
are we just spending money just to spend money because we said we were gonna be in the top quartile? That's what it
Well, I
sounds
think
like to
that-
me.
I think the outcome is that you're going to keep experienced teachers, and that
Well, we're raising the 0 teachers. We're
well, but
raising 0.
you're also, what I've talked about is also raising the 5 and 10-year teacher too at the same time. So you would be,
That's
you would
gonna
be,
a big cost.
Yeah,
That's going to cost us a lot more.
yeah.
well, okay, then you're going to lose experienced teachers.
Well, we just need to
So
know.
then, in
because-
that case, you might as well keep it at 50, because you gain nothing if you don't raise the 5 and 10 and 15. You've gained nothing. We're not,
So that's an argument for just leave it.
Yeah, leave
Back
it.
to your question, leave it.
Yeah,
And it goes back to the
again,
teacher's
it's,
point.
if you don't do it across the board, you're not, experienced teachers aren't going to stick around.
And it's only those first 2 years,
Yeah.
from what it looks like on that.
They catch up in year 2, I would argue.
It's between year 2 and 3 where it crosses over.
Territory.
And that's why I said if we went to 52, then again, we would have to look down the line
Go up.
to take care of those.
If it's, it'd be easier to go to Letitia's point, of Dave's point of paying advanced teachers 5 to 10, 15 years and putting our money there as opposed to a 1, 2, 3-year teacher who's just now learning. If we're going to pay above market, like Dave said and Letitia said, and we value the experience, they're going to come here. We might be able to attract them more. I don't see the value in paying increasing the rate of pay for the first 1, 2, 3-year teacher.
Well, you know, the value there is you know, you're generally going to attract a better crop of teachers. I know we pretty much turn them away, but we've been slipping down, it seems like every year. I think we're 3rd now or 4th on the list of the school districts around in our area.
For pay?
Which is, you know, if that's what we want to do, that's what we're going to do. I think, again, Robert, I believe, you know, what you're saying is right. I want the advanced teachers, the experienced teachers to be taken care of.
That's right.
You know, but you know, I guess we have to weigh that against, you know, are we going to continue to get the best of the best when we're not paying?
But we've already talked about this too. It was either at a seminar or something, a conference. Pay is not the ultimate decider. It's the culture. It's the support system. And I would think we have a top-notch destination district when it comes to, you know, education and teacher support, everything else except for the money. They'll come here more than just for the pay.
And the money's still, we still are in the top quartile
Yeah, so-
for every other pay grade.
Right, after 2.5 years, we're in the.
And in
top
some, we're 5 and 8%, if I'm right, above.
And
There
we're
is-
number 1 or number 2 in all the other.
There is something else to consider. If we leave it at that level, we have established a floor that we'll never get off of. Because even if you raise every salary above that from here until infinity, at 2% per year, we're never going to get off the floor. We'll never get above that point. And that gap will continue to open up every district around us because that 2% will open up every single year. So no, we may be 2% or 3% behind this time. For 5 years now, we're 5 or 6% behind. And 10 years from there, we're 10 or 12% behind starting salary. So
Yeah, you would have to adjust it at some
a hard
point.
floor.
Yeah.
Oh, we're gonna have to adjust
Yeah,
it.
you would have to adjust
have
it
to
at some
adjust
point.
Yeah, right now, we're not seeing recruiting issues because of this,
It will happen.
but I think eventually that would be
That's
the
correct.
case we'd have to
I
talk
think it's
about.
something we should definitely revisit each year and look at.
Yeah,
and decide.
absolutely. If you don't do anything this year, then it doesn't have to be like an annual question.
I also
to
think we
when
need
is-
to see how everything plays out legislatively
Sure.
too.
Yeah, there's.
Yeah, but I asked everybody, this
I
is,
know,
okay,
Become
But
too
that
this
does
is a
play a
hypothetical.
factor. I
Yeah.
mean, I know
No,
right
that
now,
will be a
but
factor.
it does play a
Well-
factor. It's in the back of my mind.
Actually, it doesn't.
Everything just jumps up.
Actually, it
Everything
doesn't.
comes up.
It's that 50,000.
The gaps stay the same.
Well, the
Yeah,
gas
it's
station, I'm
exactly the
thinking
same.
how much money we have too. That's a factor.
Well, again, but like
We
you
can
said,
spend.
that gap stays the same. So even if you had $5,000, that the 55,000 we paying new teachers at Northeast, whatever, would become 57.
Right.
So that gap would
True.
still be
Right,
there.
we're
That
all
gap
You're
would
right.
still open
We'll
up.
all be that. But I was
Exactly.
thinking how much the hospital get to spend however we like.
Well, that's if the House bill comes in. If the Senate bill
Exactly.
comes in, and we don't have that discretion,
You just move the gap.
and the gap continues
The
to
gap
open
will
up.
just change.
So I'm gonna just say we're not really sensing.
There is something in the House plan that says that they would raise the minimum teacher salary schedule and allocate an additional $140 million in funding for teacher quality program, providing districts with the resources for recruiting and retaining teachers in the
Right.
classroom. So
And I've heard a few examples of that. One is to pay teachers that work at your Title I campuses $1,000 more than other teachers to try to recruit your best teachers to go to your most challenging campus. You know, ideas like that. That's what that money. And they did quickly say, since there was a press conference right after the House conference about the invalidity of the STAR test, that stuff isn't based on STAR. They said that in the press conference. It's going to be based on how districts want to set those. So, Linda, I'm not hearing a real strong push to change the 50. And again, it's a hypothetical right now, Amy, you're right.
I do think it's something we need to revisit, like, I'm just saying every year and see
I
what
agree.
everybody else is doing. Because at some point in time, if that gap is large enough, we will start having
Yeah.
problems getting new teachers.
So is any other, so that's one of the 8 recommendations. That was the one that's kind of the biggest one. So are there any other questions about the other 8 recommendations? Linda, do you remember the, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry. But in the short term, for the next year or two, if the teachers do get the 5,000, that's gonna, think about how that affects the psychology of the individual.
Yeah, it'll distract them.
They're distracted. So they're more worried about the teaching environment and church civil and the quality education and their support system more than, oh, somebody in Northeast is running more than me. They're just gonna be
I
like,
agree.
man, I'm
When
running
it moves
5,000.
up, there's not going to be as much comparing each
Well,
other
that's
for
why,
a little while.
the Senate bill,
Yep.
it's just the 5,000, it goes to the salary, but there's nothing for the classroom, so you're not looking at anything to help with pupil-teacher ratio.
Well,
And I think that's probably a bigger issue for most of the teachers than,
not to draw away from that, but Jane Nelson, who was in Senate Bill 3, actually made this comment. So we know that teachers are dipping in their own personal funds to pay for classroom supplies. Our teachers are struggling financially, said Nelson, laying out about Monday. The only thing we need to do first and foremost is recognize the need to uplift our whole teaching profession. So they're thinking that parlay is going to the classroom, whether there's or not.
Yeah.
There's
Well,
some
it's
thinking in there.
not.
They're saying it is.
yeah, it's going to the classroom out of the teacher's pocket,
Right. But what I'm saying is,
which is what's happening now, so.
Not,
That
so I
doesn't
think what
change,
you're
but-
saying, not everybody will agree that it's not going to the classroom.
Yeah.
Some of that.
Yeah, no, I understand, but
I think we have to go back to just what is the net plus or minus for discretionary spending for SCUs. And one plan is a cost of $500,000 and the other one is a plus $9 million. It's in discretionary spending for SCUC at the end of the day. And we're gonna have to bifurcate that from the teacher pay.
So we're just gonna
raise.
revisit this next year, generally? We'll just revisit.
Yeah, that's good, but is there any other heartburn?
The only other
for-
question I had is, I know they suggested $5 and $10 for substitute. Do we need to go more than that, since I hear there's lots of substitute issues?
Yeah, that'll get us into the, it won't put us in the top quartile. Now, if you want us to bring back a number for the top quartile of substitutes, we can do that, but it'll get us.
We have what the areas around us are paying, the surrounding area.
Let us
So we
do
can look at that
this.
separately if you want.
Let us pull that out and send it out, since again, nothing has to be
Probably
decided.
the only area that we'd still be a little bit below is long-term, when they go into a long-term status.
Let's send those comps out to the
But
They're
I
board.
also
can smell that
comping
now.
higher for Mondays and Fridays. So that
I'm
way-
sorry?
Mondays and Fridays, I know some comp higher, pay more on Fridays and
Some
Mondays.
do that,
Some do that, right?
We'll send.
I just didn't know if
those
anybody around us did that.
yeah.
Okay,
I'd
so-
have to check into that.
To her point, top 3 reasons why we don't have substitutes, or we have a substitute issue.
Number one, we do a lot of teacher training, and we're willing to keep doing that other districts don't do. And we got to commit to whatever we have to do to keep that happening. 2, our pay is not quite as good. And 3, I don't know, I mean.
A lot of local.
well, you just.
Yeah, we do have a lot of
You
competition.
just generally have a lot of things going on in the springtime. You've got a lot
Yeah.
of competitions, a lot of travel.
But we do more than our neighbors. We actually involve our teachers in decision-making. And so we pull them sometimes to do that, whereas other districts would just send out memos and you shall do it. We pull them in. So some of it's self-inflicted in the sense that we want them to be involved in the process.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's my whole point. So we pay $90. Would that solve the issue? We're still bringing in more teachers. Is that necessarily going to solve the problem?
It'll help, maybe bump
Yeah.
30 or 40 more people in the pool.
We
which
do
that
share
helps.
substitutes with surrounding areas, and so we've had a few comments that they'll take a job in a local area around us because it's paying so much more dollars per day.
If it solves the problem, I'm in favor.
I don't know if it's gonna solve the problem, it'll help.
I think we believe strongly that it will help. Put a few more people in the pool, hold them in the pool, which is what we need.
Hey, 100, I might.
Robert, you would
Yeah.
One day.
not
Yeah.
want
No
to.
more
Half a
corporal
day.
discipline?
I give him half a day.
We're going to have to, again, thank you for the suspending where we are, not letting us finish these subjects, maybe, you're right, but we got
Wait, half of the
I don't think you could. I don't know, you probably could. Depending on what the subject is.
yeah, PE. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry. Well, that's all right. Let's
Yeah,
go.
you can-
Let's move. Oops.
All right, Paige,
I didn't mean it like
take
that.
us home. No, that's all good. 10 minutes to wrap up.
Okay, so you are familiar with a couple of the charts on the update to the budget parameter memo. In the first column is the 18-19 adopted budget, the 121.6 million, the 19-20 revenue estimate as of today, the 124. So we see that additional revenue just from budget to budget is about 3.1 million, and that's the first green box at the top.
Assuming nothing with the
Assuming,
house.
okay, assuming everything stays the same as it was the school year.
And that's the only way we know to kind of see where we are in order to calculate the new dollars. Does that make sense? It's just, like, what if we get nothing more than the current formula provides?
And I might add that it is due to growth. I mean, it's
Right.
due to the growth of students and the enrollment number that we're using.
Okay, so then let's flip the page and we ran a scenario that if we went, let's say we actually started this before the house plan came.
Right.
And so what would we, if these additional dollars came, then, what is it being spent on?
Right.
So what are those?
So if you go to the next slide, the needs beyond the base budget, things that we're prioritizing for additional revenue. And I'll skip real quick over, we did have, go to the next page for some of the needs that we identified for the 18-19 when we were discussing possibly doing a TRE. If you look in function 11, that's our instructional function. All of those things have not begun or haven't happened. The main thing there would have been the at-risk staff at the elementary schools. We were going to hire interventionists at each of those schools. We had some band instruments in there, and then student and classroom devices. So that was in function 11. That's what we had identified. In function 13, which is staff development, we have begun some of the special education training and the curriculum training. So that is underway, and then we've got some additional training needs there. Function 23 down in the left-hand corner would be for office staff. That was 3 positions, I believe. One at Cibolo Valley, which is growing, a support position for that school, and then one at each of the junior highs. 2 additional social workers was identified as a need. I believe it continues to be a need. And then if you turn to page 31 would be your counseling and your assessment function. So assessment for special education, that has gone through. We have done that with budget amendment and things like that. Social and emotional learning still on the table there. Function 51, if you'll remember back in September, we brought a budget amendment to you to take care of the roofing, access controls, and painting schedule that hit the general operating fund balance. The other 2 things have not been realized. 36, we had some athletic equipment on the table. And then in 52, security materials, and I believe that was like for badges and entry and things like that, materials associated with making the buildings more secure.
So those were all bullet number 1 of those 4 bullets.
Yes, and so I'm going to go back to that. Go back to that slide, needs beyond base budget. One thing that Dr. Gibson referred to a moment ago was if we have teacher compensation mandates and we have to go, do something like a $5,000 per teacher, there will be other staff compensation adjustments beyond those adjustments.
So we'll
if you
cost
will.
all that out and let you see exactly what you're looking at. So like when I did that, if you move this up, this moves up, this moves up, we're going to cost all that out just so you can see it. It's not that we're making that proposal, it's just our job is to provide the information to you. And then the 3 million in positions that we've talked about, those are
all in operations and instruction. Those are positions that have been requested in previous years and currently that we haven't been able to fund.
We've just almost completely deferred those. We've done teachers and bus drivers and few child nutrition because that's out of that enterprise fund. And a few custodians, like with the new campus, but other than that, we've deferred that 3 million to balance the budget. And then let's talk about class size real quick. Linda, do you, yeah.
Yeah, so I also gave you a list I put together of class sizes. Comes off the TAPA report, so it basically is comparing us to our local comparison districts and then our statewide comparison districts. So this will be the average that comes through the TAPA report as far as class size. And so I'm broken that down by campuses and by grade levels, so you can kind of have that comparison. Some areas are doing just fine, some were a little bit high, some were lower, so it, kind of take a look at that as far as just the overall information on our class size.
So if they're on that last bullet, and this gets into real money. So when we can cost this stuff out any way you want us to. We thought we would start with you all taking this home and studying it. Does that sound fair enough? And that way you can kind of look at where we are, and we're not coming in here with any foregoing. I asked Linda and Paige to prepare where we stand currently. And if you wanted to make any adjustment, it would be off of this. But I know I'm preaching to the choir here. Then comes classrooms. That piece to a recall. That's maybe $5,000 more than currently. Right? So they just have to factor all that into it.
And then the next last thing is the future facility planning, Mr. Priestley.
So just as a reminder, as Paige mentioned earlier, some of the EPP that is underway on the M&O side, access control, interior and exterior finishes at some of our campuses, as well as some roofing repairs, that is ongoing. What we're looking at now is forecasting and the use of some realized bond savings. There's some bond 2013 savings that we're moving forward with, and looking at working on the elementary campus entry vestibules for Schertz, Sippel, Wiederstein, and Cibolo Valley. That was on the 13 bond for the upgrades to campuses. It's roughly about $255,000 for those 4 campuses. So looking at the bond savings in 2013 going forward and doing those elementary campuses. And then the plan for that is to move forward and look at our intermediates, junior high and high school campuses as well. So that would leave Schlatter, Corbett, and then looking at Steele to get that first entry level, like what we have as a standard now going across the district of being, you walk in, there's a vestibule and you have a storefront glass window of some sort of barrier where you don't just have a counter and somebody can conceivably jump over, so there's at least a barrier there. So that's what's in the plan for 13 savings. Looking at 16, if you recall on the bond, these are 3 areas. HVAC, land, and roofing to be considered and brought forth to you as well, to the board. HVAC was on the bond of 16, and this is also on the EPP, and we're looking at expending a plan to expend some 16 savings that we could realize to knock off some of those. The first one up would be Green Valley Elementary at approximately $4 to $5 million. We're thinking, yeah, it's a big chunk to do that campus replacement.
This board in the fall looked at those EPP numbers. This buys that number down, because that was the M&O aspect of it. And what we're saying is we have bond savings that we can buy.
And the same concept for land, allocating some for future land purchases for a district, especially with what's that's another topic, but brewing in our southeast region and our southwest region and our northeast region, so to speak, in our cities and our ETJs. And then the concept of looking forth and moving forward and trying to take a bite out of some other areas for long-range planning, and that would be on some of our campus roofing projects. Some we're taking with EPP dollars that were allocated, but also there's some more needs coming forth as well. So just as an FYI, there's some future plans on that on the facility planning side, and some possible funding sources through bond savings.
So if everybody just, so here, there it is, HVAC, land, roofing, Wayne will start preparing stuff to come back.
How much did you say the estimate on the HVAC was going to be?
For Green Valley, just starting with Green Valley, Mr. Pivito, we're looking at approximately $5 million. And then in the plan there, also after that, there's some other campus issues that we have. as well as in this building. We, as you know, we did Malish East. Malish West is also due. That's about $1 million. There's some HVAC consideration for Corbett. That's about $2 million. And then the whole complex behind the fence back here, that's just is what it is. So if we want to address that as well, we're looking at about 1.5 to 2 million there. So just ballparking it now, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, $11 million right there in HVAC.
Which would have appeared over the next couple of years in the EPP number. So
Or on a future bond.
Or on a future bond, that's right. So it starts making that look a lot more palatable. And this is good. I mean, we're in a good position. We're going to come in on time and under budget. So this is the use of the dollars. I guess I should say there was a little more enthusiasm. We're coming in on time and under budget. Congratulations.
March 2020.
Yeah, well, I know, but you wouldn't be talking here if you didn't feel like you've got some pretty hard numbers showing that these savings will be achieved.
And we're just trying to keep it consistent as to what we've done in the past.
All right, anybody okay with that?
You know, I went to school for 12 years without air conditioning.
Yeah, I went to school without air conditioning too.
People would not
But I wouldn't want my kids to go to school without air conditioning. I lived through that.
Hey, I don't care, I'm not there.
I'm pretty sure I didn't have air conditioning in Oregon either.
Oregon, come on.
In South
I was on Galveston Bay.
It was a big deal with that.
Little different.
A little different.
Could that just be part of the social and emotional learning resiliency? It's resiliency training, right?
That is resiliency
We weren't home to the Mosquito Festival though, like somebody else I know.
Oh, yeah.
All right, Linda and Paige, take us home. Y'all got 2 minutes to cover the last page in the packet.
Just a little status on the one-time payment for this school year, the 18-19,
Yeah,
no
switch
longer
gears to
talking about the 19-20, 18-19. We are bringing the change to the compensation. Linda will be bringing that back as an action item in March, and we will be doing a budget, and hopefully at that time too, we'll be bringing an amount. We think that February just closed, and we're going to be able to see where we are and make that's halfway through the school year, so we'll be able to make a prediction. Budget amendment will come in April. We will have to do a budget amendment to be able to do it, just simply because some of the functions that pay out don't have a lot of money, and we don't want to be overdrawn in those functions. So the payment to the eligible staff will be made in May. Looking very likely that it will be a separate check altogether or separate direct deposit, what have you. We'll set that amount between $750 and $1,000, and we will know that. I put by the April board meeting, we'll know it by March. Eligible employee estimate right now is about 1,750. Worked with HR today to determine that. So your cost estimates are right there at $750 and $1,000, and just very, very hopeful that we'll be able to do $1,000. I think that it's going to, well, I know that that's going to be a wonderful thing to be able to do for our employees.
Yeah, we can clap for that. That's good.
Hey, we have to take out TRS, Medicare, all that, even though that's one time.
Yeah.
That still has to.
Yes.
So
Not TRS.
Not TRS, just,
Medicare
that's right,
taxes.
it's not in there.
Yeah, it's not,
That's
it's,
right.
remember, it's
It won't
not
affect your TRS.
It won't affect your
compensation.
TRS, that's right.
It's not part
It
of it.
doesn't help, it doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
Okay, so thanks for that summary. And then again, I want to remind trustees that we said we would see where we were with our kid count in March, and that's what we're doing. And we think we're hovering around 80 or 85 above. And so that's enough to cover this and a little bit more. So legislative update, I want to recap. Mr. Westbrook, legislative update was just FYI. I appreciate the board, attention on all of that. Ed, we're another trip in March to the Capitol, 28th of March. Priscilla's asking trustees if they want to go. I believe maybe tomorrow, maybe today. Tomorrow, okay, she smiles. Maybe the next day, but it's coming to you.
Do we have a date on that?
The 28th. March 28th, a Thursday. And I think like mid-morning to mid-afternoon, try to make this one's usually a fast run, where it's kind of just catch them behind the podium, or wherever they are, we go catch them and show our face.
10 to about 2.
10 to 2 is our
But
estimate.
since this is going to be actually part of, actually passing bills, this is really more important than the last one was. Last week just got lay of the land, this we're actually gonna be moving.
Yeah, now we've got some talking points. That's exactly right. So that, this is kind of a pop-in. Like, we're gonna let them know we're gonna be in the house, but we're not scheduling appointments, and then we're just gonna go find them. You know, they'll step out. Like, even if they're on the floor, they'll step out. And so we're gonna have these 5 and 10-minute conversations about these really important issues to us. Paige said that she would bring back approximately $500,000 in cost avoidance in 62, 63, and 64. Linda, you got enough. You're going to do some follow-up and board updates, but then I think you got enough on that new teacher salary to kind of know where we are, and we know we'll bring it back every single year. We'll add it to part of our top 10 questions for our budget template that will now probably become the protocol for the entire Region 20, if I was guessing, but I'm just guessing. Trustee, did y'all get enough? Did you get enough on the student to teacher ratio, like the chart? You see what you have, and because okay, well, I don't want to do that. So I want y'all to have time to look at that and then bring back any questions. That's going to take a while to percolate, so that's why we want you to have it in your hand. And then Wayne got some direction on the EPP, and we're about to start lighting up those things and bringing them back to the board.
So,
10 minutes.
are they going to be here? Everybody's leaving before the meeting?
They have asked me respectfully to let them fly out when we adjourn. Yeah. So, but we should be out of executive session in 15 minutes, but cabinet members, y'all can adios.
This board will now adjourn into closed session pursuant to the following sections of the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code Section 551.074, authorization to deliberate the employment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, dismissal of a public officer, employee, or to hear a complaint charge against an officer or employee. Time is now
7:05.
Session, we're now reconvened. Time is now 7:25. Do I have a motion?
Mr. President, I move the Board of Trustees approve the administrative professional job reclassification of Executive Director, Finance to Chief Financial Officer.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I think I just want to note that that was the position before. It did go away.
Correct.
And we're just bringing it back as it was before.
Correct.
All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion passes unanimously. We are now adjourned if there's no objection.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate the information.
You guys.